We need to look at the quality of life, of how we're actually living.
Insight and awareness, spiritual explorer. Soul intuitive, emotional and spiritual mentor and award-winning author, Lorraine Nylon.
Welcome, explorers. I'm your host, Lorraine Nylon, and I want to thank you for being part of the adventure. Today, our guest is Reneau Peurifoy, who is a therapist, teacher, and the author of Why You Feel the Way You Do. Understand and heal the source of stressful emotions. So I'm really interested to talk to you, and I want to know what is behind our negative emotions, unhealthy response patterns, and distorted thought patterns, which I got directly off your book description.
Well, emotions have fascinated me for a long time, and to understand what they are, you need to use neurobiologists look at the term affect, and affects are things that drive you to do something. So the simplest ones are what they call sensory affects: heat, cold, pressure. The colder I am, the more I want to get warm. The warmer I am, the more I have a desire to get cool. And the next level up are what they call the homeostatic affects, which are the things that create a balance in your body. So hunger and thirst are the two big ones. The thirstier I am, the more I want to get water. The hungrier I am, the more I want to eat. And then emotions are kind of the next level up, and they get tied into your thinking patterns and your beliefs and your experiences as you grow up. And there's basically 7 circuits that they found, and we share these with our pets and all the other animals, that are, mammals. And the ones that you're familiar with, anger and fear, everybody knows about those 2 circuits. Lust
Yeah,
comes up
sure.
during adolescence. We're all familiar with that one. A couple of the ones that were interesting are, one is called seeking. And if you look at babies or puppies or kittens or whatever, they have this desire to go out and explore their environment. And it's just a drive. And it's actually an emotional drive, just like the other emotions that we have, to go out and explore the environment, looking for good things, bad things. It's why when you go to a new situation, the first thing you do is you look around, kind of check everything out. And that's just kind of an inner drive. You just want to know what's out there. Another one that's kind of interesting is the play circuit. And again, mammals have that. And we are social animals. Mammals tend to be very social, and that's how we learn limits. In fact, I had my great granddaughter out at the playground today, and I was just watching all the kids play, and they're learning what you can do and what you can't do. I was looking at what do I say? No, I don't want to do that. And so we learn social limits, and we still, as adults, like to play. We enjoy
Yeah, sure.
humor. We enjoy doing things that are fun. It clicks into that old pleasure center of the brain.
So when people shut down their play, because you do get people that have, they've shut down that part of themselves, how does that impact them?
Well, you can all of these can be shut down. I mean, probably
Right.
the saddest example, there's a circuit called the Panic calls it the panic circuit, but we know it more as separation anxiety in kids. And
Yeah,
so when a
right.
child is, the adult or the caregiver is gone, they go into panic. And the same thing with, other mammals. And then that triggers a caring circuit in the parent that wants to respond to that. You see that with kids on the playground. When one falls down, all the other kids, kind of look around and they have concern. You had babies come in from Eastern Europe, orphanages that had not been held. The bottles were popped up, so they never got any interaction with human beings. And so when they would cry, because they weren't responded to, they eventually just quit crying. And when they
Yeah.
were adopted, you found that they had problems with attachment. They had what were called attachment disorders. And so all of these circuits, just like anything else with human beings, can be are modified by our experience and also our beliefs and our expectations about what's good, what's bad, what's safe, what's not safe. So while in the average person, they're all kind of, working there, they don't have to be. And you have people where the caring circuit and stuff, we call them sociopaths. They're not working the way they're supposed to work. So it's like anything else with human beings. There are things that can interfere with the normal function of them. And by the way, the caring circuit and the panic or the separation anxiety circuit is what helps to bond us as human beings, as adults. That's why when somebody is away, you miss them, and why you enjoy being around people that you have a deep connection with. Those 2 circuits are going together, and with like a parent and a child, you see it in the oxytocin levels that rise up when they get together and they're interacting.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we've got 7 main circuits. So fear,
Well, okay,
play,
there's two
cur
fears, right? Danger,
right,
and then there's separation anxiety.
yeah,
Then there's anger, and then there's what do I say, the caring circuit, lust, which comes up, and during puberty, and then you're searching or seeking and play.
right. Oh, there you go. It's interesting because I always try with my clients to foster their curiosity. Because if you stop seeking, you get, I refer to it as being emotionally stuck, because that's what keeps us, pushing to understand ourselves.
Mhm.
And when otherwise you become a monotonous sort of version of yourself because you're not expanding anymore. You're just sort of circulating in between what different beliefs and thought processes that may not necessarily reflect who you really are.
Well,
So
that's true, and because
yeah,
again, all of these you can shut down. The classic when we talk about response patterns, the two classic ones back in the 80s, 70s through 80s that were really big in education, and you still hear about them, are learned helplessness. And you could take like the original experiments were with dogs, and they would give them shocks that they could not escape from, and then pretty soon they just gave up trying. They put them into a new environment where they could just walk away very easily, and they didn't even try because they learned they couldn't escape. And you see this with kids a lot, coming from abusive backgrounds. You see it even in populations where there's been really a harsh dictatorship. They get out of that environment, they still act as if they're in that environment where they don't have a lot of choices, and they're very limited. The other big one is, or these ways back then, was locus of control. A locus is just a fancy word for center. So where's your center of control? Is it outside of you or is it inside of you? So again, people who grow up in an environment where they don't have a lot of choices and they got to really be guarded, they tend to have an outer locus of control. Things just happen to me. I don't have a lot of control in my life. So if they get a raise at work, they'll say things like, well, it just happened. They probably didn't have anybody else they could choose. It's just one of those things. Whereas a person with an internal locus of control, they would say things like, well, I work hard. Yeah, I deserve it. I can see where they saw the merit in it. So, or like with the homework with kids in education, if one with an external locus of control fails at a test, they'll say things like, well, just can't do it. It's just the way it is. I can't help that. Where the internal locus of control individual will say things like, well, I really didn't study for it. I could probably put more effort in and do better next time. So again, they see that they have some control and some power in their environment, whereas the other person does not see that. And so that manifested just a whole lot of behaviors.
yeah, yeah. And for you, do you think that people understand their emotions? How do you view? Are we aware of ourselves enough that we're understanding our emotions?
Well, most of the time we're unconscious. It's amazing how much your unconscious part of your brain does on a minute to minute basis. I mean, just think of the simple act of walking. You got a part of your brain, it's measuring distances, it's coordinating your body, it's watching out for obstacles and dangers, as well as kind of keeping an eye out for good things. And all the while, you're thinking about, gee, I wonder what I want to have for lunch, or what am I going to watch on TV tonight? And it's good that your subconscious can do these complex things without thinking about them, because it does free us up to think about other things. But at the same time, a lot of times these negative core response patterns, like learned helplessness or internal or external locus of control, and they start to control a lot of your behavior without you even realizing it. In fact, everybody has a whole set of individual response patterns that have developed throughout their life, positive and negative. And one of the things that I found in my work is you put a label on it. That gives you a way to start to identify it when it's coming up in your life. Because if you don't have a name for it or a label, you tend to be unaware of it.
Yeah,
So things can range from conflict is dangerous to the opposite positive would be I can handle conflict. I have tools. Intimacy is painful. The opposite of that would be, intimacy is desirable and it's a good thing. So you take somebody with an example of intimacy is painful. They grew up in an environment where every time they tried to get close to the parent, the parent would distance themselves, uh, you know, for a variety of reasons, everything from just drug abuse to just, they were neglected when they were, young. And so now they grow up, and I would see them in a counseling session, and they would say, I don't understand why every time I find somebody that I want to get close to, I do things and it just never works out. I mess it up. And what's going on is intimacy has been associated with pain. And so as an adult, they start to get into a relationship, it starts to get close, and all the bells and whistles are going off inside, danger, danger, danger. And so they do things oftentimes in a very unconscious way that creates distance and pushes the person away. Afterwards, saying to them, I don't understand why I act that way. I don't understand why I did that. And so, we could come up with a couple dozen types of things like this that people experience. I mean, the other big one is conflict is dangerous. And you see this in somebody growing up in an environment where if they spoke up to the parent or they tried to assert themselves, they got stomped on. Now, again, depending upon their personality, they might mirror that and become a fighter, or they might learn that conflict is dangerous and then they kind of shut down and they don't try to assert themselves. Now they're at work or someplace and they'll come in and they'll say, I don't understand why I don't speak up. I'm in a restaurant. I really wanted to order this thing, but my friend said it was no good. So I just, I went along with what my friend said. And so those are the types of things that, again, drive people that oftentimes they're totally unaware of until they do some self introspection or, they get some help either through a book or through a person or something of that nature.
So sometimes with clients, I get them to try and help them identify the stuff that we've got that's unconscious is, I explain it to them, think of the old fashioned dot to dot where you join the dots together and then you see a bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you can't put the dot to the next dot to the next dot, then you can't understand what the bigger picture is. What is the emotion? Like, where did it start?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them talk to me about, and it can be even, really savage abuse when they're children and things like that, and they've got these behaviors. And as adults, and they go, I didn't correlate that back to the abuse. There's like a break in the circuit that they haven't put the dots together to go, because of this, I've now got these behaviors, which sounds really weird because you think, that should be an easy, connection. But I actually find a lot of people don't understand themselves and their emotions enough to be able to put all the dots together. And it's easy to break a circuit for yourself as well, because you do, these beliefs get buried within us, so we don't comprehend them. So that's where understanding your emotions helps you put those dots together.
Well, and a lot of times it's simply because they've never been showed how to connect the dots too. It's that's why when I do books, I do lots of examples of people so people can start to relate to, oh, yeah, that looks like what happened to me. Because actually, in their essence, emotions are pretty simple. It's like anger and fear are two of your core emotions. And anger, when I talk about it, I talk about it in a broad sense from just, irritation to rage. And fear is, apprehension to panic. It's just where the dial is turned up or down. And both of those are really just a response to threat.
Yeah, true.
And if the threat is manageable, then I'm going to become angry and try to reduce it. And if the threat is unmanageable, then I want to get away from it. So if it's a grizzly bear, I get away. If it's a little tiny dog barking at me, I'm going to yell at it and chase it away. And so when I see somebody who has got a lot of anxiety, one of the things I identify or try to look at is, so where's the threat? And sometimes people are really not very clear about that. But once you can identify where the threat is, then you can come up with, a way to manage the threat or take a look at, is it a real threat or is it a threat from the past, and then deal with it, in those terms.
And what do you think we need to know about our emotions? What do you think that we're missing, If we're not really understanding our emotions, what is it that we're not being educated about?
Well, I think again, if you can get a roadmap as to what emotions are and how they work, then you can start to put the pieces together. We respond a lot to things that are unreal. Uh,
Yes,
we
that
have,
is true.
and this is the thing is if you are vividly imagining something, your body responds as if it's in the presence right now. So if I'm thinking about a future event that's going to be really threatening to me, my body is going to respond as if it's a real threat happening right now. That's basically how relaxation response works. You imagine some relaxing scenes or something that's relaxing, and then that generates that response inside of your body. The more effectively you can imagine it, the more effectively you get the response pattern. And when I work with people, one of the things I've done is I'll start with what's called a genogram, where you take pictures, a little picture of their family, kind of like a pedigree chart, and you get a description of the adults. And then I take some early recollections, grade school. What was grade school like? Because that's when you kind of get a sense of, am I okay? Am I not okay? Do I have power? Do I not have power? The next set of early recollections. And basically, it's not a really detailed thing. I just say, tell me what that was like for you, and positives and negatives. And middle school's when the next place where the train can go off the tracks, right? Just because of pure pressure, you got all that adolescent stuff going on, starting up. The hormones are kicking in, and it's just an interesting and chaotic time in people's lives. And then high school, because that's the next big place that a lot of stuff happens for people. And then I can look at that, and usually I can just start making conjectures. I would guess that this and this is an issue for you. And they would say, boy, you're some kind of a, magician or something, prophet. And I'll say, no, it's right there on the paper in front of me. Uh, so people are really fairly easy to figure out once you sit down and kind of look at those types of things within their life. Again, most people just have never done that. They've never thought about it in those terms, and they've just gone along acting in a very unconscious way, amazed sometimes at some of the negative stuff that they're doing, not realizing what's generating it. As we were talking earlier, so much of our behavior is unconscious.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating.
Hmm.
It is fascinating. How do we identify response patterns and how do we learn to change them?
Well, we talked about the learned helplessness and those types of things, and a lot of it's just looking at where are you successful in your life and where are you not successful. Because again, we're all a mix of positive and negative. It's not like it's
Yeah.
all one way or the other. We
And
we
we're
tend to
meant to
look at the
be.
negative stuff
We're meant
because
to
that's
be.
causing problems, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's like I deal a lot with anger and anxiety because that causes problems. The other stuff usually doesn't cause problems that much. So I have people take a look at let's say it is the conflict is dangerous. They're not they're having trouble speaking up when they want to, or conversely, they're the other direction. We put a label on it. So and then we say, okay, come up with a simple explanation for why this is the way it is. People tend to get into this circular why questioning. I don't understand why this happened. I don't understand why. I mean, why am I acting that way? And I'll just stop them. I'll say, so why do you think you're acting that way? 9 times out of 10, they come up with a very good explanation. It's just that it's something they're having a hard time accepting. So I try to get them to write out a simple one paragraph explanation, nothing very complex. I grew up in an environment where every time I spoke up, I was put down or I was quieted. And so I learned that you don't talk, you don't speak up, don't assert yourself. Okay, the next thing I have them do is I say, okay, let's identify very specifically where that program is operating in your life. And that this is kind of a behavioral approach. The more you can pinpoint, these are the situations where this occurs. Okay, it occurs at work when I'm at a meeting. I never express my opinion. I always go along with what's being said. When I'm in a restaurant, I go along with what other people suggest. When I'm at home and I'm watching TV with my mate, I want to watch a program, but they want to watch something else. I never tell them how much I want to watch this other program. So you come up with a variety of things like that. And then what are the opposite behaviors? Because one of the basic behavioral things, if you want to change a behavior, you have to start practicing the opposite positive, right? So we start with the easy areas. We have them start practicing opposite positives. At the same time, giving themselves some very solid self-talk that they can use to help to encourage that. Essentially, you go through a process of desensitization. If I'm working with somebody, I'm thinking of somebody that I worked with who had a fear of water. Okay, very simple phobia, right? Her brothers told her that there were piranhas in the pool. They were going to eat her toes, right? Long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it developed to this big fear of water. As an adult, she just would not go to a pool or the ocean or anything like that. And so, we said, okay, we're going to go through a process of desensitization, taught her some relaxation, breathing skills, ways to manage the anxiety. And she started with sitting next to the water, and again, reminding herself that, this is just an old response pattern because of those stupid things my brother said. I'm safe. There's no sharks in the water. Nothing's going to happen to me. And eventually get to where she get in and start swimming. It took a period of time, but she desensitized. The same basic process can be used for any behavior. And so when we're talking about like the idea of speaking up, again, you start in simple situations, you practice it, you get some confidence there, and you move on to the next more complex things. Same thing with maybe a person who has trouble expressing intimacy, right? You start with simple things, maybe just giving some simple compliments, and you move on to, depending upon who is in their circle of friends, to deeper things. And so it works for, it's very mechanical, but it works. Human
Yeah.
beings respond very well to that approach.
Well, I always giggle when I go into the beach. I hear the Jaws music. So, I diffuse it by laughing,
Mhm.
going, oh, okay, that's that movie. That movie's still with me. And then I just, it's like once I can give it a logical reason, I don't hear the music anymore. But generally, as I'm walking into the water, I'll hear the Jaws music. And I was like, must have been at the right age to hear that music, so it stayed with me forever. So,
Yeah,
and they're the things that impact us. And if we understand them, then we can deal with them. If we don't understand them, that's why I believe that self-reflection is so important. If you can't
it is, and
contemplate, yeah,
it's something that is in such short supply nowadays.
it is actually. Well, I run courses on it now because it's a life skill, but it's a life skill we're losing.
And our electronics is one of the things that interferes with that. We are so busy with self-stimulation, uh, whether it's Facebook or some other internet thing going on, or we're watching TV or playing with video games or whatever, and the younger generation is especially having problems with this area. Our Surgeon General just came out with a report talking about the problems with social media and electronics and how much anxiety and anger and loneliness and depression that's going on, being caused by the young people who don't have any genuine relationships.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? And even when, I was talking to a school teacher once and she said she was on a bus, a school excursion bus, and the kids were actually like I think they were about 12 and years old. And she said that they were sitting there texting each other,
Right.
but they were sitting next to each other, and she said years ago, you were telling kids not to sit down because they were, getting over the backs of the chairs and yak 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 and talking, and like there was this buzz in the bus of excitement. And she said that lasts for about 5 minutes now, and then they're all on their phones. And I thought, how
Yeah.
sad, because they're losing that time where you are learning how to communicate and you are learning different personality types, and they become foundations for you to understand other humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as parents, if you've got young children or teenagers, setting up rules. Your friends come over, you put all your phones on the counter here, and you don't touch them until you guys leave, which may seem harsh, but I know my niece with her children. That she's got a basket. They come home, they put their phones in this little basket, and they have a limited time they can do it. And there's some wonderful tools where you can shut the internet down at a certain time and allow only a certain amount of time on it, so that you start to have some kind of a control over the electronics that are in your house. And I really encourage parents, if they haven't, to take a look at some of those tools and start using them. Probably the saddest thing for me, though, is to go out to a restaurant and to see both parents on their phone and the kid on their electronic device, and
Yeah, yeah,
nobody's talking throughout the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
meal.
Yeah, and it's easy to fall into the trap. You know what I mean? Like I was watching myself. I was actually watching something on telly, and then I was TV, and then I was picking up the phone. I was like, "What are you doing?" You know, like why? What? You know, you're either watching this or you're going to do that. And but you know, we're trying to do two things at once, and we actually can't pull that off. We tell ourselves we are, but we
Yeah.
really, you know, we don't do it very well. Which is, you know, so it becomes like a bit of an addiction. So
Well,
when
it is,
we,
because you get a little dopamine push.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you get that little buzz going on, and this is really bad in a classroom setting, because they've been shown that just not being able to see their phone with some kids will start to cause anxiety. And then of course you
that's
get that little buzz, and then there's that dopamine push again. Saw a web
sorry.
study where they had 18-year-olds to mid 20-year-olds do without their any kind of internet for 2 weeks, and some of them went through withdrawal symptoms very similar to a heroin addict. It was very interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I can see that because I was even when you're driving down the main street, you know, shopping centres and things like that, people are walking around looking at their phone.
Yeah,
So then, you know, so it's ingrained into them. And the sad part is, you know, if you're from the generation where that's always been here, you don't know anything different.
yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate that way because I'm
Well, I
definitely
am too.
I'm
You know,
definitely old school. So,
I bridge the two worlds too. But you know, like I see a lot of things changing, but they're not for the betterment of humans, really. You know,
yeah,
we are losing self reflection skills, we are losing communication skills, we're after instant gratification.
yeah. We
So,
need
all of
that
us,
quiet time. Yeah,
yeah, we do. And we need to know that some things take time. You know, if you can ask a question, it might take you a while to work it all out. Whereas where we're sort of telling the way social media is set up things, it's like, you know, we can give you an instant answer,
right.
and then we're not discerning whether that answer works for us. So we're losing that. Does this resonate with me personally?
And it's not just the internet and social media. It's everything in our world. Gee whiz, I got to wait 5 minutes for the microwave to heat up my dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, gee,
Yes.
what is this?
Yeah, that's right. Yes. I just Googled that. That should be up. You know, like, oh, yeah, yeah, we are
Uh,
like that. So I'm going to ask you the big question that we ask all our guests. What does humanity need to acknowledge and understand for us to evolve?
for me, it's understanding that you do have a God, and that you are going to meet him someday, because we live in such a materialistic world nowadays. People look at themselves as, I'm a little machine, and when I'm dead, it's gone. There's nothing. So I need to get everything I can get right now. And yet I always encourage people, take a look at some of the near-death experience research that's going on. You know,
Mm.
Moody, in his book, Life After Life, kind of kicked it off. And you've now got some major studies by actual scientists, doing very rigorous approaches, who say, you know, we don't know what's going on, but we know that these experiences are real. The brain is dead, the heart has stopped, and yet people are reporting things in the operating room, in the next room, or they're miles away, that later on, for oftentimes, will be third party confirmed. And so there's something that goes on after death. And again, they don't want to talk about it because it gets into the whole, spiritual, side of life. So they want to be scientific. So they just say, we can't explain it, but we know there's something going on, that there is something after death that's happening.
Oh, yeah,
And
there's
I
a
think
lot of
people need to
research
take a look at
happening.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it too is we need to look at the quality of life, of how we're actually living, because you know, different people that I'm talking to, we've become very separated. And like you said, we've become materialistic and we're trying to tick boxes, and we're doing that because we're trying to prove to other people that we're successful and we're doing well. And there was a study once on happiness, and one of the things that he found was that, and I'm sorry I can't remember the researcher's name, was that we govern our happiness now by, am I doing better than someone else? Can I see that I'm doing better than someone else? And I think that is terribly sad.
Well, in fact, with social media, they have a term that they call fear of missing out, which
Yeah.
is very big for young kids. Yeah, when you look at all the different, because the last couple chapters of my book, I talk about the three big things that the so-called science of happiness or positive psychology is identified. And number one, above everything else, is relationship. Having
Yeah.
deep, meaningful relationships. And that's, I think, an area that people are really lacking in today because of their isolation and their hooking in. You leave, you've got your garage door opener, you got your earbuds in, you go to work, or you stay home and you're in your little cubicle, you come home, and you can go through your whole day without having a meaningful conversation with somebody else. And that is so sad because people used to have, their extended family, their surrounding village or the block that they lived on, people that they knew for 20 years. You had a problem, you'd go, if not to your parent, you'd go over to, uncle or the older guy that you used to have a relationship with, or gal or whoever. And people don't have that now. And so you wonder why there's so much increase in anxiety and depression, loneliness. Loneliness is a major thing that's really ramped up in the last 10, 15 years. And it's not just COVID. It's been
I
going on
agree.
before then, and it's
Yeah.
escalating even now. Because, again, people have lost the art of relationship, especially young people. I
Yeah.
have a small group I've been meeting with for 20 years, and we know each other really well.
Yeah.
But people don't have that. And so, as a therapist, a lot of times you're a paid friend.
Yeah.
You're somebody that they can really talk to on a deep level. And yeah, I have insights and I can give them some tools and stuff. But sometimes that's the most important part of therapy, is just being able to connect with somebody on a deep level. If you've got 3 or 4 people, even 2 or 3 that you can do that with, you don't have to worry about your mental health. You're probably going to be okay because you'll have people you can talk to and discuss things at a deep level and share your hurts and your joys, your successes and your failures. And that's a lot of what people need. People used to have a lot of time to do that. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah. You took the words
Unless
out of
you
my
make it,
mouth. Yeah.
you have
You
to
have
set
to.
it as a priority.
Yeah, I agree. And we are becoming busier and busier and busier and losing. That's why I always say look at your lifestyle, and I don't mean your financial setting. I mean,
Hmm.
how are you living? Do you have those relationships? Because I think it's important that a really good friend or relative or someone that you trust, they're a sounding board that you can toss ideas around
Hmm.
and get an understanding of where you're at and where you want to be, within yourself. I'm talking about emotions. And then you can have some input or discussion, and you might completely disagree with the advice that your friend gives you, but you've said, you've opened up and expressed the truth of what you're feeling, and then from there you can go somewhere.
And oftentimes, just being heard and
Mm.
accepted is what makes a big difference in a person's life. And
Yeah,
you're,
and
whether they agree or not, to
that's it.
know that they're going to accept you as you are,
Yeah.
warts and all, and still you're fine.
And it's all right to have difference of opinion. It's all right for you to listen to someone's advice and then go, I get why they're saying that, but it doesn't quite work for me. But I'll take that little bit there, and that
Yeah.
can be the door opener for what works for you. So that we don't have to have, because I get a lot of clients sometimes that they'll have really controlling friends that start dictating what
Oh
they should
yeah.
be
Yeah.
doing, and
Well,
but they always
we
come.
do that with experts nowadays, right? I used to
We
tell my
do.
clients, think of me kind of like a used car salesperson, right? Don't believe or accept anything I say. Run it through your own brain, see if it
Mm,
fits and if it's reasonable. That's a criteria that people often don't do. is it reasonable? Just because somebody has credentials after their name, or they've written a book, or they're in some position somewhere, doesn't
Exactly.
mean they know diddly squat about who you are or your life. You're the one who has to trust your own opinion. In fact, that was one of the hardest things I sometimes had to do with people, is to get them to trust that they could decide for themselves, what was good for them.
Yeah, I agree. And that I feel we're getting more and more of that because because of the generation coming through social media, that they're always being told, so they're not discerning. They're watching something, so they're taking that as that's how it works. That's how this works. They're not discerning their own opinion, which makes it harder for them to resonate with
Yeah.
what is of value to them. So, and we do sort of, we're like cattle. We all jump on one trend and away we go, and then we wait for the next trend and away we go. And where are we individually
Hmm.
in that? So I always try to remind people you're within the collective of humanity, but you are a unique spark within that collective.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they're the kind of things we're losing, I think, which is, I find it very sad, and I feel it takes people so far away from their natural self that they become image driven and nearly robotic. So they shut down a lot of what they're feeling. So they become more and more unconscious of their emotional patterns and things like that.
Well, when you're busy, you can't be very in touch.
No, well, that's right. You're running from one place to the other. And the other thing I see is that, before, when we grew up, like you said, you've got your neighbours and your uncles, and you've got this extended connection to other people, different ideas. Now, their peers are someone that they don't even know off the internet,
Yeah.
who's, promoting themselves, really, which is, that's how it works. But it becomes very, I don't know, it becomes very shallow in lots of ways because they don't feel the connection.
Well, and that's why you have to have some people that you have that deep connection with, and
Mm,
it takes time. Again, we used to have lots of time to go to town, lots of time out in the field or doing whatever chore we were doing, and and we live at such a fast pace nowadays. Unless you schedule that time for yourself and for those things that are important, you can find yourself just on that old treadmill, running faster and faster. So again, it's a priority. It's like when I was in private practice, I actually scheduled in time for the gym just like I would a client, because it was important for my body. So still
yeah,
do
that
that.
makes sense. Yeah. So, what was your other 2 points at the end of your book about happiness and positivity?
Well, relationship is number one. That's the big one. The second one is
Hmm.
purpose, having a reason to get up in the world. And the broader the purpose, the better. A narrow purpose would simply be, I'm going to be a good mom, or I'm going to sell the most widgets I can, which works until the kids are gone or widgets are no longer being sold. So having something a little bit broader is useful, and oftentimes it'll tie into the third one, which is meaning. So
Yeah.
relationship, purpose, and meaning. Meaning is a little hard to describe because, again, it's those answers you have for the big questions in life. What is life all about? Is there life after death? What is how do I deal with tragedy? How do I put it into context? And so your existential or spiritual beliefs, or how you put that into context when bad things happen. You lose somebody, you lose work, you're not able to do something you want to do. So what do I do with that? And so having a context of an existential or spiritual belief system that helps you manage that is very important. So relationship, purpose, and then meaning. And purpose, again, it can be broader, such as I want to help people live better lives through the counseling that I do, or I want to bring something useful into the world. I want to make useful products for them and
Mm,
design things, as opposed to just a very narrow purpose. And
yeah.
you can have more than one purpose, right?
Oh,
If you're
definitely.
stuck with just one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Definitely. I like all of those. So yeah, it's brilliant. And I think sometimes your purpose can be, how do I want to live? How do I want to, what sort of relationships do I want to have?
Right.
And, Yeah, so you can blend those three very easily together. So,
Well, and purpose and meaning, they kind of work hand in hand. One
yeah,
goes
for
off the
sure.
other. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I like the idea of spiritually exploring, which really, to me, spirituality is understanding yourself and
mm,
understanding that you're part of a bigger picture. And however you discover that, whatever path that takes you on, brilliant, as long as you're enjoying it and it feels like it resonates with you.
yeah.
That's the way. So I think it's time to play Flip the Book. So would you like to pick a book between, you've got three to pick from, sorry, 1, 2, or 3. Which book would you like? And I
Oh,
know you can't
We'll take two.
take 2. Brilliant. So that is called, oddly enough, Spirituality, Evolution, and Awakened Consciousness. So you have 1 to 188 pages to pick from.
Oh, we'll take 106.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You got 7 paragraphs.
Oh, 7, of course.
7. Okay, so this is under the heading Karma Provides Evolutionary Opportunities.
You said
Not
calmness?
karma.
Oh, karma. Okay.
Karma. Sorry, karma.
Yeah.
Bit of accent thing happening there, I'd say. So, not everything you experience you attract, nor is it a mirrored reflection of you. Sometimes it's consequences with this, and other times you are the innocent bystander to another's decision to unleash their unconsciousness. Would you like me to read that again?
Oh, gee, I don't know how to respond to that. We live in an interesting world, and sometimes things happen to us because of something we've done directly,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes we're just collateral damage. Because we do live in a broader reality, around us, and not sure where to go to after that, but
I see a lot of people and they're stuck on this belief that if something bad happened to them,
mhm,
it's because they attracted it in, or it's a reflection of something that's hidden within themselves.
mhm,
So I always find that is not always true. Sometimes it is. If you're nasty to someone and someone's nasty back, there's a bit of a reflection and there's a consequence that
mhm,
you've received from your behavior. And so, I always look at intent, purpose, and consequences, knowing that consequences you're not always in control of, and it's not always a complete
mhm,
reflection of the decisions you've made. But I see people and they flip that back on themselves, believing they're to blame. They're stuck in that, well, if I wasn't, there must be something wrong with me because, this happened to me, or which often stems from trauma backgrounds and things like that as well. So yeah, I've wrote a lot about understanding karma as an action. It's an energy action,
mhm,
and looking at our baggage is our emotional baggage is something that we've stored because we haven't been able to be in a position that we felt safe enough or have the information to be able to address it and resolve it. And
mhm,
it stays there until we actually do. And I say that we carry that wherever our soul goes,
mhm.
we carry that until we resolve it. So we keep coming back to resolve some of these issues. So that was the essence behind that paragraph, which
Okay.
is that's the end of a chapter, I think. So no, it's not, it's in the middle. So yeah, so I'll just read out the top of the page and see where you go. We are creators with free will, and we decide what we create. Our creations are our karma.
Well, again, my worldview is a little bit different. I believe my creator wants what's good for me. And my task is to, whatever happens to me, to glorify him as much as I can. And he's going to use whatever happens to me in a way that's positive ultimately, even if in the short term it's not, doesn't look it. look like
Yeah.
it's positive, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Well, that's
it's for my good and it's to glorify Him. And when I go into life that way, that's what I find happens. I mean, I've had some not so good things happen to me, but in the long run, it comes out good. To use maybe a biblical analogy, when the 5,000 and the 4,000 were fed, they went and they picked up all the pieces afterwards, right? And to me, nothing goes to waste in your experience and in your life. It all can be turned to something positive if you allow it.
Oh, I love that. That's a good
Mm.
way to finish. Yeah, nothing's wasted if we use it well.
Yeah.
And understanding our emotions and ourselves is a brilliant way of using our life experiences
Mm.
and our past. I want to thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you sharing time with me.
Well, yeah, this was fun. So thank you for inviting me.